Hi guys, it's Nicole from Cozy Cloud Knits. So today I'm going to teach you how to make this hand crocheted baby playmat, or it could be used as a rug as well. The final product is about 30 by 30 inches, and I'm going to show you all the supplies that we need first. So for supplies, you're going to need jumbo size 7 yarn. Um, you can look at all the different colors here to see exactly how much you need, but I'm going to show you some examples of what kind of yarn you can use. You'll also need a pair of scissors and a lighter as well. So for different types of yarn, you can use Bernat Blanket Extra Thick from Joann Fabrics. You could also use Bernat Blanket Big from Michaels, or you could use Hobby Lobby's Yarn Bee Eternal Bliss. To find out how many yards it is, you can just look in the small print and it should show you. So the Bernat blanket is 32 yards. These jumbo scenes from Joann Fabrics are actually a lot bigger. They're 72 yards. So just make sure you look at the yardage and figure out what kind you want to use. So before we begin, I want to teach you guys how to actually hand crochet. So I'm just going to start by showing you an example of a chain. When you're hand crocheting, you want to make sure that the last two loops of your chain are always much smaller. So the last two loops should always be about 1 finger's width wide. Like you can see here, the last two loops are smaller. So when you do a hand crochet, what you're going to do is you're going to count 2 V's from your finger. And then you're going to pull up a loop from that open area. And then you're going to pull the working yarn through those 2 loops. And that creates your first single crochet stitch. So as you can tell, it is much different than hand knitting. With hand knitting, you're just pulling up a loop in each open space. But with hand crocheting, you're pulling up a loop and then using your working yarn to pull through those 2 loops. Now this creates a much thicker, more like knotted look of a stitch than hand knitting does, but it's also going to create a more plush product. So that's why I call this pattern a baby mat or a rug, because it does create a much thicker, tighter, dense project than if you were to hand knit this. So if you look at the top of your chain, you're also going to see these braids, and that helps you to count your stitches as well. So I'm just going to continue to show you what a single crochet looks like. So here I pulled up another loop and used my working yarn to pull through the 2 loops. And then I'm going to feel for the next hole, and I'm going to do the same thing. Pull up a loop and pull through those 2 loops. So for this project, at the end of every row, you're always going to chain 1. So that just means you're going to pull up a loop in your last loop, and then you're going to turn your work. So completely turn it all the way over. And then to make sure that you're not, so that your edge is nice and braided, you just need to make sure that your working yarn is towards the back, and look at it from the top to make sure that it has a nice braided look. You don't want it to be twisted. So your working yarn should be towards the back. And then you're going to continue on to your next row. So just like we did before, you're going to count 2 stitches from your finger, and that's the stitch you're going to work into. So you're going to pull up a loop and create your first single crochet of the next row. So keep in mind, this is just an example. I just wanted you to practice hand knitting before we actually started the project, just so you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like and how to identify stitches throughout the project. So to begin, we're going to create a slip knot. So you're just going to drape the working yarn over your hand, And then you're going to twist your hand and pull the yarn through just to create a slip knot. I want your first slip knot stitch to be smaller, so about 1 finger's width wide. And when you create your chain, we're not counting this loop as part of your chain. So we're going to chain 14. So don't count that as your first one. So this is going to be 1, 2. I want each loop now to be about 2 fingers width wide. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. While you're doing your chain, make sure that you're not allowing it to twist at all. You want it to just stay straight as you pull up those loops. When you get to loop 13 and 14, I want you to make them much smaller than the rest of them. So I want 13 and 14 to be about 1 finger's width wide. So that's 13 and 14. See how those two end loops are much smaller? That's just going to make your project look cleaner for our first single crochet into the next row. Okay, so you're going to count 2 V's to the left of your loop that's on your finger, and that's the one we're going to work into. This is how it's going to be for every row. So 1, 2, and you're going to pull up a loop from that stitch and put those 2 together, and this is going to be your first single crochet of row number 1. You're going to work your way all the way down the chain. So put those 2 loops together, and just like we did when we were practicing, you're going to pull your working yarn through those 2 loops. This creates your first single crochet. So work into the next chain space. This is going to be your single crochet number 2. Continue working down the chain, finding that chain space, pulling up the working yarn, and then pulling the working yarn through the 2 loops. And here, if you look at your chain so far, you're going to see those V's, and that's how you can always go back and check to see how many you've done. So I have 1 and 2 and 3. So far I have 3 single crochets. So this is going to be my 4th single crochet. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back and count. 1V, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So after our 12 single crochets, in our next stitch, we're going to increase. So that just means that you're doing 2 single crochets in the same chain space. So in this hole right here, we're going to put 2 single crochets, okay? So pull up your loop and pull your working yarn through. And in that same exact space, you're going to pull up your loop again and pull your working yarn through. Having this increase here is what creates the arch of the rainbow. Okay, so now you're going to turn your work and continue working on the other side of the chain. Okay, so we're going to continue working into the other side of the chain, And what I want you to do is I want you to feel. You're going to feel an opening right next to your last single crochet, but that's actually the loop that we already hand crocheted into. So it's going to feel like you're skipping a loop. You're going to go to the second V or the second loop, and that's the one that we're going to work into. So skip this first one here because that's the one we already actually hand knit into or hand crocheted into. So this second little opening here is where we're doing our next single crochet. So you're going to single crochet 12 more all the way down the other side of the chain. So that was 1. You can feel these openings just to double check to be sure that you're in the right space. When you get to the end, you should be at the very end of your chain. That should be 12 single crochet there. So maybe double check it before you work your way down just to be sure that you're working into the right space. So this should be 2, 3, Okay, so that was my 12th single crochet on the other side. This is what your foundation chain should look like. This is your chain and row 1. And now I'm gonna show you how to go to row 2. So like I said, at the end of every row, you need to chain 1 and turn your work. Okay, so make sure your working yarn is towards the back side and the top of your chain shows a nice braid. Okay, so you're gonna find that second V or the second stitch from your finger, and that's where you're gonna pull up your working yarn to create your loop. And then use your working yarn to pull up a loop through both loops. That's your first single crochet. So I want you to continue working down your chain. So you're going to single crochet 12 all the way down. Okay, so that was my 12th stitch. So in the next 2 stitches, we're going to increase in both of the next 2. So that means you're going to do 2 single crochets in this next stitch here. So you're doing 2 single crochets in the same exact stitch. That's one of your increases. And then you're going to increase again. So in that next stitch or the next V space, you're going to do 2 more single crochet stitches in the same exact stitch. Okay, so that's going to continue to create that rainbow arch. And then you're going to continue working your single crochets all the way down until you get to 12, and that should take you to the very end of the row. Okay, so I'm just crocheting my last stitch of the row, so this is stitch number 12. So before I pull through those 2 loops, you want to change to your new color. That's going to make your finished product look nice and clean. Otherwise, it's going to look like your colors kind of blend into each row, and you don't want that. So before you pull your loop through those um, those the single crochet stitch, I want you to either knot or I'm gonna burn my yarn together, but this is where you should do your color change. So I'm just gonna show you how I burn my yarn together, and then we'll continue with the next row. Okay, so now that I have my yarn tied on or burned on, I'm going to pull through those 2 stitches, and that's my last single crochet stitch of row 2. So now I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, make sure that it's not twisted, and I'm going to move on to row 3. So row 3, you're going to be working in your first colored stripe. So for row 3, you're going to count your 2 V stitches and work into that stitch. And we're going to single crochet 11. Okay, and I'm just going to double check to make sure I have the right number of stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So in my next stitch here, I'm just going to increase. So 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So that's 1, working in that same space. You're going to pull up another single crochet. And then you're going to single crochet 4. 4, and then we are going to increase again, so 2 single crochets into that next space. So that's 1, and in the same space, that's 2. And then continue with your 11 more single crochet all the way down, and that should bring you to the end. And just like we've done with every other row so far, you're going to chain 1 and turn. So that's my chain 1, turn it over, and we're going to start working into row 4. So for row 4, work 2 V's over from your finger, and for this row we are going to single crochet 14, increase, increase again, so that's 4 single crochets in 2 stitches both together, and then you're going to single crochet 14 again on the other side. And remember, when you get to the end of this row, we're going to do another color change. So that means on your last stitch, on stitch number 32, you're not going to pull your working yarn through those 2 loops. We're going to change the color first. Okay, so this is my last stitch of this row. So this is stitch number 32. And like I said, do not pull the working yarn through these 2 stitches. This is where we're going to do a color change first. So I'm just going to burn my new color onto the other piece of yarn. That way they're connected. Like I said, you can knot it as well. You just may be able to see those knots. I always find that burning it makes a cleaner finished product. So melt those 2 pieces of yarn together. And then you're just going to complete your last stitch of this row by pulling up your new color yarn. So that completes your last stitch of this row, and then don't forget to chain 1 and then turn your work. Okay, so now we're working on to row 5. So for row 5, you're going to do the same thing that you've been doing. Count those 2 V's from your finger, and you're going to work into that stitch or that chain space. So for this row, you are going to do 13 single crochet, then you're going to increase, so 2 stitches in one chain space, single crochet 4, increase again, and then single crochet 13. That's going to give you a total of 34 stitches in this row, and then don't forget to chain 1 and turn at the end. Okay, so now we're going to work on row 16. So at this point, I feel like you probably have the whole process down pat. You're counting the 2 stitches to the left of your finger, and then you're working into each chain space. You can use the words at the top of the screen as a reminder, or you can use the printable PDF file. That will tell you exactly what to do as well. So for this row, you're going to single crochet 16. You're going to increase and increase again, so 2 stitches in each of those chain spaces, and then you're going to single crochet 16. And at the end of this row, we're doing another color change. Okay, so now I'm just going to add my third colored stripe onto my rainbow. So before I pull my working yarn through those 2 loops of my last stitch, I'm going to change to the next color. So I'm going to use the burn method again. Okay, so we're going to complete the last stitch of that last row by pulling our yarn through, and then we're going to chain one and we're going to turn our work and we're going to work into the next row. So for row 7, we are going to single crochet 14. You're going to do an increase, single crochet 6, do another increase, single crochet 14, and then we're going to chain one and turn our work. So now that you've probably gotten the hang of this, you're welcome to continue watching the video, or you can even use the PDF file that has the actual written pattern in it as well. But the video also has the stitch count labeled on the top throughout, so you can continue watching it if you're a visual learner, especially if it's your first time creating one of these. And if you have any questions along the way, definitely don't hesitate to email me or shoot me a message on Instagram. Is usually my most popular social media platform that I normally respond to fairly quickly. But you're welcome to reach out to me in any way, and I'm usually pretty good about getting back to you. So as you're hand crocheting, you'll notice that this technique uses a lot more yarn than hand knitting does, but it also creates a much more dense rug-like finished product, whereas with hand knitting, then the stitches tend to stretch over time. It doesn't feel as thick. These projects are very dense and the stitches really do not stretch at all, so you don't have to worry about there being holes in it um, or it starting to wear over time. They actually hold up really well, and these can actually be hand washed or machine washed as well. You just put it in the washing machine on cold, on delicate or gentle cycle, and then I usually just let mine air dry. You can put it on tumble dry, no heat as well. But that's the nice thing about them is if they get dirty, you can just throw them in the wash. So in this next stitch here, I am increasing. And then I'm going to single crochet 14 down the other side of my arch. And when I get to the end, that should be 38 stitches total. Okay, so now we're working into row 8. So this is going to be your last row using this color. So count 2 chain spaces over and pull up your first single crochet. And we are going to single crochet 18 all the way down, Then we're going to do 2 increases and then single crochet another 18 on the other side of your arch. Okay, so when you get to the end of row 8, you are going to cut your yarn to do a color change, and that's going to be before you pull through those 2 loops. So I'm just going to get my new color and light both pieces together just like I did for the past few rounds, and connect those 2 pieces of yarn. And then I'm just going to use my new color to pull through those 2 loops to complete my last stitch of row 8. So then just like we have in the past, you're going to chain one and then turn your work, and that will be the beginning of row 9. Okay, so working into row 9, for this row you're going to single crochet 16, you're going to increase, single crochet 6, increase, single crochet 16, and then you're going to chain one and turn. So you should have a total of 42 stitches total. Okay, so I'm just pulling through my last stitch of this row. I chained one and I turned my work over. And now I'm working into row 10. So for row 10, you are going to single crochet 20, increase, increase again, single crochet 20, and then on that last 20th stitch, you are going to change your color before pulling through the 2 loops. Okay, so I changed to my border color and pulled through those two loops, and then I chained one, and I'm just going to turn my work like I've been doing. We're going to continue working the same way that we have, but this border is going to be a little different because we're going to work in the round now. So instead of chaining one and turning our work, when we get to the end, we're going to continue working all the way around the rainbow pattern, and that's going to create that border around the entire rainbow. So for this round, I want you to single crochet 17, you're going to increase, single crochet 8, increase, single crochet 17, and then I am going to go over the bottom part with you once we get there. Okay, so I'm just finishing up my 17 single crochet stitches around the rainbow, and now we're going to work across the bottom. So that's why I call this round one, because we're working all the way around instead of just doing a row. So when you go across the bottom, you're going to do 2 single crochet stitches in each color, and then in the middle you're going to do 4 single crochet stitches. So there's not really a right way of doing this. You kind of just have to feel in the spaces, um, and that's where you're going to pull up a single crochet. doesn't really have to be in a specific space as long as you're in the correct color. So if you see here, I did 2 single crochets in that first dark pink color. Now I'm going to do another 2 single crochets in the next pink. And then working over to the next color, I'm going to do another 2 single crochets. Okay, so you're going to continue doing 2 single crochets in each color. And then when you get to that center base, so in this case it's white, you're going to do 4 single crochets across the bottom there. And then you're going to continue doing 2 single crochets in each color. So you're going to do 4 here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then continue working all the way to the end. So across the bottom here, you're going to have 20 single crochets, 20 single crochet stitches total. Okay, so this is my last stitch. So there's 20 across now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so for our next round, I want you to keep in mind that we're not chaining and turning anymore. So since we're not doing that, you also don't need to count 2 V's over. You're just working into every stitch from here on out. So in this first stitch, you're going to increase. So 2 single crochets in the first stitch. That's going to just help you to create that corner. And then you are going to single crochet 12, increase, single crochet 18, increase, single crochet 12, increase, and then you should be at the bottom at this point, and you're going to single crochet 20 across the bottom just like you did before. And when you get to the end, you're going to have 70 total stitches. Okay, so for our final round of the border, round 3, you're going to increase in that corner stitch, and then you're going to single crochet 48, increase again, that's going to be the corner stitch again, and then single crochet 20 across the bottom. And that is going to be the end of your round, and I'm going to show you how to just finish it off, but you should have 72 total stitches for this round. Okay, so this is what it should look like when it's all completed. And to finish off, you're just gonna cut your tail and pull your yarn through that last loop and pull it tight. That's just gonna make it so that the end is pretty secure. And I usually do another knot as well, just to make sure that it doesn't unravel. There's no chance of it unraveling. So that usually secures it. And then once I knot it, I just trim the edges or trim the end piece so that there's no more tail yarn sticking out. And then I flip my blanket over and I also snip the center piece, that's a tail piece of yarn as well. So just to add a finishing touch, I usually like to add these little leather tags. I had these made on Etsy. The person that makes them, their company is called Birch and Cider. I've always had really good luck with their stuff. I use a smaller yarn. This is just Bernat blanket yarn, but you can use any type of yarn. And I just sew my tag on, usually down at the bottom of my rainbow mat. So obviously adding the tag is optional, but I always find that it adds a nice finished touch to the finished product. So this is what it looks like, and that is the end of the tutorial. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me, reach out to me on social media. I'm always happy to help, and I always love seeing your finished products, so make sure you tag me in any posts or email me pictures because I always love to see them.